Autolayout is one of the most useful Figma features because it enables you to create workflows that are efficient and fast. So in this video, you're going to learn everything that you need to know in order to use Autolayout in your projects. And just before we get started, I want to remind you that this is a video from my upcoming Figma course. And I also recently released a Figma cheat sheet, which you can download entirely for free in the link in the description. So feel free to check it out, and without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So Autolayout is going to enable you to create responsive elements such as buttons or even more complex layouts which can range from a single component, as you see over here, all the way to large screen sets. So it's very exciting, and we're going to learn about the basics right now. So let's get started, and the very first thing that we want to do is we're going to create a rectangle so that we can create a button and start analyzing all the auto layout core features. So we're going to add some text right here. I'm going to write button inside of it. Just going to increase the size just a little bit so that it's more visible overall. And we're going to change the color of this one to this purple. Let's make the text white so it's more visible. Also, let's add a little bit of corner radius just for the sake of it. Now we're going to create our very first auto layout element. And in order to do so, we need to select both of these layers, and we're going to right click. And as you can see right here in the drop down menu, there is this add auto layout feature. And if you click on it, you can see that now the top layer is going to be almost like a group, but it's going to be an auto layout group. And the way that you recognize it is by seeing these three bars, which, as we're going to see in just a moment, these are actually going to change based on the auto layout setting. Now, one more thing before we continue is there is this basically this keyboard shortcut which you can use, and I'm just going to make two layers real quick just to show you the keyboard shortcut, which is Shift plus A. And I highly recommend you to learn this because it's just going to make things way easier as you work on auto layout projects. And since this is going to be one of the actions which we're going to perform quite often in your Figma workflow. Now let's talk about the auto layout and how it works. As you can see on the very right column, there is this auto layout section, which appears once you create an auto layout element. And you're going to see a few different options. And if you're familiar with CSS, HTML, and especially Flexbox, this is very similar. It's almost like introducing Flexbox to the design world. So it's very powerful, and by default we're going to have the layout displayed horizontally. But there's also a vertical layout, which, as you can see, it's not going to change much the moment that we select it. But the reason being is that the logic behind it is that Figma is saying all the elements inside of this auto layout are going to display horizontally. So the moment that we actually copy and paste a few of these elements, this is going to be more easy to understand. So as you can see, it's all horizontal. The moment that I shift it to vertical, you can see that all the elements are going to be stacked vertically. This is going to be really powerful, and we're going to examine this in just a moment. Now, there's also a few different options. There is wrap, which we're actually going to explore in another video to give some more details. There is the horizontal gap between lines. So as you can see, this is where the fun starts to come, because you can actually make bulk decisions for all the elements within one auto layout group and the other, or actually one element and the other within the auto layout group. And this is going to essentially bridge the gap. But let's say that I want to have less gap between this element and this element compared to all the other ones. Well, the great thing about auto layout is that you can actually nest auto layout groups within other auto layout groups. So if I select these two text elements and I use Shift plus A, as you can see, almost nothing changes on the surface, but we can see right here on the groups that we have a new auto layout, and this is going to be separate from the other ones. And I can go on and change individually the gap between these elements without having the other ones being affected by it. So this is this starts to become, you know, really interesting, and I can also see that if I change this to vertical, these guys are still set to horizontal. So you can see how you can start nesting auto layouts within auto layouts and create this really organized systems within Figma. So let's go back to the horizontal one. We're going to see some of these other options. The first one is going to be the horizontal padding. So the padding is essentially the distance between the right side and the left side. And if you have a look at the vertical auto layout, it's going to be pretty much the same. So in that regard, nothing really changes. There's also the vertical padding, so you can tweak the top and bottom areas at the same time. But let's say that I wanted to only decrease the top section. Well, in that case, it's very simple. Simply click on individual padding. And as you can see, this menu is going to open up, which is essentially enabling you to tweak all of the padding values individually. So you can create all sorts of different auto layout spacing for each and every side of the group. There's also one more thing that I definitely want to mention, and that is that you can actually change the alignment based of the elements within the auto layout group. So if I select top left, well, in this case, doesn't really change that much. But if you start making this group quite bigger, you're going to notice that the moment that I change this setting, I can actually achieve different positioning in space. And if I double click on it, I can also basically spread out this to cover the entire width that is set within this auto layout group. So really, really interesting, and this opens up a whole lot of opportunities for pretty much every layout that you can think of. And there's also some more advanced auto layout options, which probably going to discuss in future videos. There's, for example, the strokes or these going to be excluded from the layout or included in the layout, and you can see the preview of this very concept, right away. But we're going to talk about this in more detail in a future video to show you with some live examples, which is going to make it way easier to understand. So this is the introduction to the auto layout, and my best recommendation right now is for you to actually take a moment, stop the video, and start experimenting with auto layout in Figma and enjoy the process.